So we're going to take a little bit of a tour of a small section of river in County Antrim to explore some of these river features that we've been looking at in the context of a place. And this is the area that we're going to visit is a little area called Glenoe in County Antrim. So it's in around about here. Let's zoom in, get you a little bit more of an overview. Here we can see Glenoe, famous for its waterfalls. Some of you may have visited it. But we want to explore this area here a little bit more. So there's the symbol for the waterfall. So we're going to take a look at the waterfall here, and down here with the Glenoe water, and then the Dun Island water down here as well. We'll get a little bit of a sense of what's happening in the landscape around about this area. Now, before we look at this in the actual GIS itself, let's turn on this Ordnance Survey map there just to see if you can make sense of what this is showing in the same kind of area. There is your Glenoe area, there's your waterfalls again, there's your Dun Island water river, and then there's your Glenoe river, the area that we've just been looking at. The Ordnance Survey map of course shows height using the contour lines. So you can see first of all around about here that the contour lines are very far apart. Now, what river feature is this? This is a flat area of land next to a river. I wonder, can you remember? It is the... Yes, that's right. It's the floodplain. You can see the floodplain here and this river. We'll have a chance to explore that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But at the edge of the floodplain, what I want you to notice here are that these contour lines are close together. And these contour lines are close together here as well. Now, what does that tell us about the topography or relief or shape of the land at the edge of the waterfall? Well, it tells us that, the edge of the floodplain. It tells us that the land here is quite steep. So you've got this flat area of floodplain with the steeper ground either side of it. So that's the kind of topography that those Ordnance Survey maps can show us. We'll come back to look at this in a moment, but let's jump in again to the Ordnance Survey, or the GIS map. So there we go, there's your Glenoe, there's the floodplain, and we've seen the land is a little bit higher either side. Now let's come round and look at this at an angle, and let's see if we can see that in action. Now we've taken a slightly different perspective, but there's the river coming down here, there's the waterfall, the Glenoe, there's the Dun Island water river there. And there is your flat land of your floodplain, and there is your higher ground, so your steeper ground either side. It's called an escarpment, that line of steeper ground that exists there. So that's the topography of this area. So what's formed this? Well, let's have a wee look at the shape of it. Actually, we'll use the Analyze tool to do this. This is quite a good tool because this shows you the orange line here showing the areas that are the same height. These are like contour lines that you can move around. Now, if you take a look over here at the left-hand side of the river valley, there's the height and there's the equivalent over there. If I move the cursor to the right-hand side, you can see there's the line moving there as well. So what you can see here is that you've got a sudden drop in height, and then you move across here into flatter land in the center. But we can measure this. So let's turn on our measure tool. What I want to do is first of all measure the full width of this. So it's around about 1 kilometre wide, the river valley and the floodplain at this point. But what's cool about this is that I can show you the change in height as well. So if we start up here and start to come down the contour line, you can see that we're dropping down already 30, 40, 50 meters down really quickly. And then we don't drop off at anywhere near the same rate as we move in here. It's getting lower and lower, but at a much more gentle rate until we reach in towards the center, 92, 93, 94, 95, starting to go back up again as we come slowly to the other side of the floodplain. And then as we come over here, you'll see we're coming back up again at the other escarpment up to the top. So it's about a kilometre across and maybe around about 95, 96 metres at its lowest point, maybe just slightly more than that, but something of that region. So you can hopefully through that get a sense of the topography of the land. Now, what is it that's causing that? Why has this river valley formed here? Well, it's this black line. We'll just get rid of that so that those lines don't appear. It's this black line here. This is a geological fault. This was formed whenever Ireland was being subjected to those massive tectonic forces around about the time 60 million years ago, whenever Ireland and Europe was splitting away from North America and the Atlantic Ocean was beginning to form. Those titanic forces then cause rocks to fracture and the fault to form here. Now the fault is a line of weakness. So if the river is going to erode, the water's going to erode anywhere, it's going to erode down this line of weakness. So what you've got here is, because of this fault, it has kind of allowed the river to slice into the landscape. Relatively flat there, an escarpment, flat floodplain, another escarpment, and relatively flat there. But what's really cool about that is that it is sliced in through the rock and is taking us back on the journey through time. So if we zoom around here to where we've got Glenoe waterfall just down in there, there's the river flowing over the top of the Antrim Plateau. Then it comes down here very steeply. I'll have a little bit of a video that I'll show you and share with you later of me going on a little journey down here, and you'll see just how steep this road is. But there is that steep escarpment and dropping down. Let's turn on a layer that shows us the geology here, because if that river valley is cutting down through the rock, cutting this out, then it's going to cut down like sideways through, slicing through a cake. So if I spin around a wee bit like that, hopefully you can kind of see that it's slicing down through the cake. You see it there, that's almost like the icing on the top, and then these are the layers in underneath as this waterfall comes down here and cuts through them, and this river's cut down through it. So let's go and have a look at this from above just to get a bit of a sense of what the geology is here. So the pink here is basalt. Now County Antrim has a lot of basalt in it because of the tectonic processes, the volcanic eruptions and the fish eruptions that poured out basalt. It's the kind of thing that also produced the Giant's Causeway up in the north coast, Cave Hill, Divis Mountain, those kinds of things near Belfast. So what you've got here is your a layer of basalt which is laid on top of the sedimentary rocks. The green in this case is limestone, and this kind of peachy colour and the blues are different types of mudstone. So what you've got here is mudstone overlaid by limestone overlaid by the basalt, the sedimentary rocks which are less resistant to erosion overlaid by the more resistant igneous rock. And again, there's your fault which has caused the weakness here which has allowed this river to open up. Okay, so hopefully you can see then how that is slicing down in and revealing the geology as the waterfall comes down through there and slices through those little bits of different types of rock. So let's move on down a little bit here. There's the waterfall itself, but we want to come down to take a look at one final feature, because we looked at the waterfall, we've looked at the floodplain. What we want to finish off here is take a look at these river meanders. These are features that you get in the lower course of a river when you start to have the river forming the floodplain here as the river meanders and weaves away round the floodplain itself. Now the floodplain is a process or a feature that's caused by the erosion as that river kind of weaves around and pushes it back. But you're also getting deposition occurring here, and you can see some of these areas of deposition as well with the river. Now let's jump in a little bit closer to a slightly better resolution. Let me just see if I can cue this up so that you can see precisely where we are. Let me spin this around here. Just bear with me a wee second so that I can get this queued up. This needs to come around here a little bit more, I think. So I'm going to show you a higher resolution version of this river here. There's the bridge, and we're going to be looking at these parts of the meander. Let's have a look. There you go. There's the bridge, and that's these parts of the meanders here. Let's zoom in as far as we can go. Now, you can see here with the river meanders, Typically what you would have on the outside bend of a meander, this is a better example of it here I think, is where you're going to get your erosion concentrated, where you get the feature of your river cliff. Now because of the angle of the sun when this photograph was taken, you can see the shadow here of just how steep that is. That's your river cliff. And then on the inside of the bend you get your deposition occurring in your slip-off slope. This is a much more gently sloping section here, and you can see the sandy deposits here. They're sandy deposits because at this part of the river the sediment that's been and the bedload that's been carried down has experienced quite a bit of attrition at this point. It's been made smaller and more rounded, so you get these very sandy deposits in here. You can just about see them at that point. The deposition on the inside of the bend, you got some plants growing on top of them, but you can still see those depositions in between. Deposition on the inside of the bend, erosion on the outside of the bend. You can see the former position of the river there, can't you? That increase in sinuosity as the erosion that takes place on the outside of the bend, the deposition in the inside of the bend. So the channel doesn't really get any wider at this point, it just becomes more sinuous. Okay, we finish off just by taking a quick look at how we can produce a little sketch map to show these processes using your own survey map. GIS maps are brilliant for doing this, but in your GCSE exam, if you're given a map, it'll be an Ordnance survey map like this, so it is important that you're able to read these as well. So let's try and simplify this down a little bit. I'm going to pull out some of the details that we don't need from this map and just leave in some of those that we do need. Let me just fade this across. And there I have simplified it down to show you the main areas of geology. So you've got your basalt here, cutting down through your limestone here and into your mudstones here. And also the green shows you where the floodplain is. Remember, it's about a kilometre across, about 95 metres from the top of this escarpment down here. We've got some of our meanders up there. So let's add some annotation on just to show you that. There's our escarpment running down here. We've got our waterfall here, and this is the main one at Glenoe here, and down into our floodplain. Okay, now let's see if we can do a bit of a sketch map showing this from an angle, an oblique view as it's called. So you can just imagine that you'd send a drone up here to take a photograph. There is the river coming down, the Glenoe waterfall coming down into the Dun Island River. There's your confluence there, and you have your meanders down around about that area. Let's fade that slightly, and there we go. That's what a sketch map would look like of that. There's your higher, flatter ground. What you've had here is the floodplain as this river has eroded down, has caused vertical erosion down here. It's cut down into the higher ground because of the fault that was occurring here to produce this floodplain. Now, of course, you do then get deposition occurring on the inside of the bend, so you have the erosion, and the rock there is covered by this layer of sediments or deposits in the floodplains as well. So that's an opportunity for us to kind of explore some particular locations on a river, a small area of a river, where you've got your waterfall, where you've got your floodplain, and you've got your meanders, and it allows us to really kind of explore that in the context of a real world location.